Hello everyone, welcome to the Ginger Snap Series Month of Horror-WEEN, where I'll be discussing a horror franchise for you guys in the month of October in a very blunt way. I'm your host, Steven Harrold, and in this year's Month of Horror-WEEN, we will be taking a look at the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Started back in 1984, this film would gross so much money in the box office, putting New Line Cinema on the map, and creating a new slasher icon. And of course, after 40 years, a lot of fans still clamor for this character and clamor for this franchise and love this franchise to death. And it's only fitting that this year, with two films coming out on anniversaries, celebrating anniversaries actually, we will be discussing this franchise. And it's been a long time coming for me to actually discuss this franchise because it is one of my favorite franchises in the slasher genre. So, to start this year's Month of Horror-WEEN with today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my review for A Nightmare on Elm Street, which was released on November 9th, 1984, celebrating its 40th anniversary this year, and was written and directed by Wes Craven. When it comes to this story, it's very simple. A bunch of teens are in Springwood, Ohio, and they are having nightmares about the same guy, while all the parents of Elm Street are growing very suspicious and being suspicious themselves when discussing said guy who is after them in their sleep, and a bunch of them are actually trying so hard to stay awake because if they fall asleep, they might die. Now, for the story of this film, of course, a lot of people do gravitate towards the fact that a lot of people just hate, dream sequences in movies, especially in horror, right? But this whole franchise is all about a dream sequence because it just dabbled in the whole fact that we had just had Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, we had Michael Myers in Halloween, and we also had Jason Voorhees by this time in Friday the 13th. There never once was a killer or a slasher villain who could evade you in your dreams. Just a fictional character, if you will, who made it resonate with a lot of audiences with this story itself because, yeah, you can run from Michael Myers, you can run from Jason Voorhees, you can run from Leatherface, but the one thing you just can't run from is sleep. And to have the villain, the antagonist of your fucking film, invade your dreams is a scary subject, and a lot of people did eventually lose sleep over this film, and that's why when it comes to this film's story, it knocks it right out of the goddamn park. Now I'm going to start with the protagonists of this movie, the main characters of this film. Of course, we're going to start with Tina, played by Amanda Weiss, and she is the red herring in this whole entire film. You believe, because we're introduced to her early in the film during a nightmare, and we are expected that she is going to be the final girl until she meets her demise early in the film, which was a nice little tip of the hat to Alfred Hitchcock and Psycho with Janet Leigh. Her character is portrayed very well by Amanda Weiss. Everything about Tina basically is like you could tell she had dreamt of Freddy for many, many nights, and she just could not go to sleep, enlisting the help that her friends come and sleep over so that she can get some sleep. And when she finally meets her demise, you feel it. You actually are concerned with the rest of the characters because of her death scene, which we will talk about later on in this video. But nonetheless, Tina was a great character. Then we have Tina's boyfriend, not boyfriend, Rod Lane, portrayed by Jose Garcia, or credited in this movie, Nick Corey. He's the tough guy of the movie. He's the bad boy. He has the switchblade, the leather jacket. He looks like a greaser from fucking Grease, right? But he also is dreaming of the same guy. He just doesn't take it seriously, though. He's like, whatever, same guy, whatever. Until he becomes the murder suspect of Tina's murder. And he's just out there trying to defend his case, but at the same time, he's looking like a fucking lunatic as he's saying it because, again, we'll get to the kills in this movie. How he is describing Tina's death, no one would believe him. Like, there's no way that happened. That's no fucking no way. Until he finally meets his demise too. Now, his portrayal in this movie was very convincing. I mean, he's the bad boy who just, he's not scared of anything. He's not afraid of anybody until you see that scene where he's in the jail cell and he's just like, he realizes he's fucked. And he knows he didn't kill her, but no one's going to believe him anyways. And his portrayal in this movie is, it's less in this film no matter what, but nonetheless, he's still pretty good for what we got. And then we go to Glenn, who is the boyfriend of Nancy, our main character. And funny enough, this is the first ever on-screen film debut of the man himself, Jack Sparrow, Johnny Depp. Now, of course, Johnny Depp, this still shocks me half the time that Johnny Depp was in A Nightmare on Elm Street half the time. I mean, even everyone's grandma knew that fucking Johnny Depp was in A Nightmare on Elm Street, right? I mean, like, if I ever fucking heard anyone say, Johnny Depp was never in A Nightmare on Elm Street, I'm like, you've been living under a fucking rock. But his portrayal in this movie, he's the jock, right? I mean, he doesn't really look much of a jock. He's more of the pretty boy, I guess you could say. But his performance as the guy who kind of just blows everything off, like, it doesn't seem like, while watching this movie, that he's ever dreamt of Fred Krueger. He's never had those nightmares until the night he bites the dust. Now, he's the one that's kind of like, he brushes everything off, he's the one that there's a rational explanation and everything. He tries to defend Nancy, his girlfriend, so much, and he even tries to help her out with the knowledge of like, okay, I guess I'll watch you as you sleep, sure, but then he passes out. Now, Glenn's portrayal in this movie is not bad, but just knowing the ramifications of who ended up playing him, Johnny Depp, and what kind of a career he would end up having in his fucking filmography is astonishing. So that's why a lot of people, when they go and revisit this film, they realize how young and how terrific Johnny Depp really was, and we all knew from the start. Then we have our main protagonist of the film, Nancy, played by Heather Langenkamp. Now, of course, she kind of takes the helm from Tina, and she now experiences all the nightmares with Fred Krueger in it, and we basically follow her throughout the whole entire film as the new final girl, the new heroine. And she does an amazing job. Heather Langenkamp's portrayal of Nancy is just on par with Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis. She's on par with Ellen Ripley, with Sigourney Weaver. She's one of the main staples of Final Girl, especially Neve Campbell's Sidney Prescott, for fuck's sakes. She portrays that nice, preppy kind of girl next door, and when you see her throughout the film, you can tell she is staying up, she can't sleep, and she's just getting worse and worse and worse. She's getting bangs under her eyes, her hair's changing color from natural color to white. She is just hell-bent on trying to stay awake so she doesn't get killed, until we finally get to the finale of where all of her friends are gone, and now she knows she has to face this monster, this dream demon herself. And Heather Langenkamp does an amazing job as Nancy, and I cannot praise it enough. Stellar performance. Now we have to talk about our antagonist, and the antagonist of this film is not a guy who wears a mask, a guy who carries a machete or a kitchen knife, or doesn't talk. It is a guy who wears a red and green sweater, a fedora, is burnt to shit, and has a glove on his right hand. That character I'm talking about, of course, is none other than the iconic Fred Krueger, who is portrayed in this film for the first time of many by Robert Englund. Fred Krueger was a character that was developed by Wes Craven through many different implications. I mean, first of all, we have the LA Times story about someone that's coming after this person in his sleep. His bully was named Freddy or Fred. The red and green sweater was all about the whole how the human eye cannot see the colors red and green side by side. The fact that he wore a fedora because of the fact that there was a guy when he was young walking down an alleyway and just looked up at him and smiled and scared him. Just the delight of scaring a child. The burn aspect was just, that's icing on the cake. And just his signature weapon of choice, a glove with razor blades on it. It's still probably one of the most inventive and one of the most scariest props or movie weapons of all time. And this character basically being a dream demon who comes and haunts you in your nightmares, how can you get away from him? He knows your fears. He knows what you're afraid of. And he uses it to his advantage to kill you. And, of course, if you guys had watched the Never Sleep Again documentary, the Elm Street Legacy, you guys would also know that, yes, Freddy Krueger was given this nice little label of being a child murderer when he was originally supposed to be a child diddler, but because of something that was going on in America at the time, they soft-pedaled that, which actually makes it even better that it's subtext because of the fact that Freddy, like Robert Englund would say in one of the documentaries, is Freddy's in their dreams with them. He's in their beds with them. That's more violation than the hard R, right? But Freddy Krueger as a character in this movie, you barely get to see what he looks like. He's always in the shadows. He's always lurking in the distance. He's always looking in the distance. And he takes many shapes and many sizes. Just the wherewithal of that, we barely get to see his face. You get glimpses, but you barely get to see much. And to see what he does, Robert Englund knew how to do this character, especially with his stance, how he looked, and how he would fuck around with that fucking glove and scraped it along every metal post he could, just to entice more fear in the actors or the characters. Robert Englund, there is a reason why he ended up going on to play Freddy Krueger many, many times. He is a staple in the horror genre. If you ever meet him, you know exactly what movies he's been in, but the one you'll always remember him for is Freddy Krueger. And Freddy Krueger in this movie is scary. He is intimidating. You can't get away from him for the simple fact that he comes after you in your sleep. And he makes an amazing addition to the slasher genre. And after just one fucking movie, he put his footprint in the annals of horror history. When it comes to the gore and the kills of this movie, there's not that many kills in this film. We've had a grand total of 4 kills in this film. We have Glenn's death, Tina's death, Rod's death, and Nancy's mom's death. Only 4 kills. But when it comes to the gore aspect of them, holy fuck, 2 of them nail it. You have Tina's death, where she is slashed from her sternum. And Rod is seeing this, and it's someone invisible he can't even fucking see. And she is swinging around the room. She is thrown through the fucking corner of the room, dragged up the wall, over the damn ceiling, and falls into the bed, just in a pool of blood. Good shit. And the fact that they used a rotating room for that effect, solid touch. Then you have Rod's death, who is essentially made out to look like a suicide. He is hung by the bed sheets in his jail cell, and of course, as we see it, it's just the bed sheets are just twining around his neck by an invisible force. And you think the cops would have noticed, like, this is not possible how he hung himself. It's not possible at all. But then there's Glenn's death. Glenn's death is quite possibly the best death in this whole entire movie, even though you don't really get much of an effect after. I mean, Glenn gets just sucked into his bed while he falls asleep. Freddy just pulls him into bed. And by the way, just letting you guys know, that is the second worst thing that has happened to Johnny Depp when it comes to bed. Only the second worst. If you know, you know. Now, he gets sucked into the bed by Freddy, but not only does he get sucked into the bed, a full fucking geyser of blood shoots out from the goddamn bed up into the ceiling, and it's just this amazing effect that they used, again, another rotating room, which had a technical issue because all the blood that was sloshing around not only hit the light fixture that zapped the guy pouring the blood, but also the fact that the room just started swaying and just going off tilted, And then there's this nice effect where the blood's just kind of going to the other side of the room. It's so imaginative. But even though it's a fuck up, his death is definitely one of the best. I mean, like, even the fact of, like, well, what fucking happened to him? I mean, like, when the police show up, it's like there's, like, nothing left of his body, right? They're like, oh, you won't need a stretcher. You'll need a mop. And it's like, fuck. I kind of want to know what the hell happened to him. Even though I know there's been cuts of where he just comes out of the bed and falls on him. Like, that has no effect to it whatsoever. It just doesn't look appealing to me. But then, of course, there's Nancy's mom's death, where she essentially is brought down into hell, I guess you could say. She's burnt to a cinder because Freddy was on top of her on fire. And, you know, she just goes away and she dies. And then, so when it comes to all the kills and the gore, I mean, not much kills, but with the gore, it fucking nails it. Then, of course, we have all the dream sequences that are going throughout this whole entire movie that are just so fucking memorable. I mean, you have the alley scene where Freddy's arms stretch out, which is bizarre. You have the hallway scene in the high school where we see Tina's dead body in a body bag, and then her legs just get lifted up by some invisible object and gets dragged away. You even have one of the most iconic shots in the whole film where Nancy's in the tub and the glove just pops out in between her legs from the tub. It's like, holy shit, a lot of girls just kind of refuse to go for baths after that for a while too. Then you have, like, even when there's the scene where, the dream where she gets Glenn to help her and he passes out. But of course, like, the whole sequence of her trying to see Rod and then he just goes right through those fucking bars, which is funny enough because it's like, these are the only two characters who can walk through bars and just make it look cool. I don't know what it is. And then it's just the whole, her running up the stairs and her feet are sinking into the steps, and then she closes the door, he jumps out the fucking mirror. Like, everything about all these dream sequences are just amazing to look at. And they knew that if they were going to make a fucking movie about nightmares, these dream sequences are going to be a fucking charm to see, and it's just striking horror gold, especially when it comes to this shit. And all these dream sequences are just so damn good. But if there's one thing that really kind of just like, Wes Craven has a thing for booby traps, eh? Nancy is getting ready to booby trap her fucking house to bring Freddy into the real world, and then she does, right? And he's just going through so much abuse. I mean, like, this guy gets a sledgehammer to the sternum, he falls down the fucking stairs, which, yes, if you look very carefully, you'll see the crash mattress on the step. He trips over a wire, which causes the light bulb to explode because it's been filled with gunpowder. He gets fucking set on fire. And the stuntman who did the fire scene, where they had even said, like, oh, he was just going to go, like, one take just up the stairs and then that's it, done. But the fact that he runs up the stairs, falls down the stairs, and then comes back up the stairs, still on fire, good job. And then there's, you know, there's the abuse that he goes through. There's the booby traps. And then there's that end sequence, which I guess they couldn't figure out what ending they wanted. From the looks of it, from when I was watching the documentary too, they basically said that they were saying Johnny drives the car, Freddy drives the car is a Freddy Krueger vehicle. They didn't know what the hell was going to happen. So they kind of mixed and matched all the endings together, but they always wanted to have the girls jump roping. Now that is one of the staples about this whole entire franchise, is the jump rope girls, especially with that nursery rhyme. Y'all know the nursery rhyme. 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4, better lock your door. 5, 6, grab your crucifix. 7, 8, gonna stay up late. 9, 10, never sleep again. Or, well, 9, 10 always changes half the time throughout these fucking films. But then there's that scene where Nancy's mom gets sucked into that goddamn door window. And you can tell that's like a blow-up doll. Very weird. But I'm going to chalk that up as it was still a fucking dream. I'm just going to chalk it up to that. But nonetheless, The ending doesn't really bother me. It's kind of like a nice little laugh at that moment, but you just knew the fact that Freddy sucked her into that thing and we get to see those girls doing the jump rope, you knew this film was going to get a sequel. A lot more sequels. So when it comes to this film's story, characters, dream sequences, the character of Freddy Krueger being introduced to the slasher genre, hell, even the music too, that Charles Bernstein had done and delivered. Very good shit. This film has always been a home run to me. Everything about Nightmare on Elm Street, especially when it comes to Freddy Krueger, especially with these earlier films, were just top notch. And I remember as a kid, there was only one scene I remember from this film that always traumatized me, and that scene just happened to be the alleyway scene. It was the one scene that always did. Freddy Krueger and the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise has their place, and this first film set the bar for what the franchise would end up becoming later on, especially going through the 80s, right? But nonetheless, when it comes to the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, and when it comes to this film in particular, it is a home run. Yes, you have your flaws. Yes, you have your little things that just kind of make no sense, or the little things that kind of like, whatever, I could have done without that. It doesn't matter. This film is still a solid film. It made people afraid to go to sleep, so it did a better fucking marketing thing than Jaws did. It made people stay out of the water, until the next fucking year. But people could eventually get over the fear of water because of sharks. No one can ever hide from their dreams because everyone has to sleep. And that's why this film always resonated with people. So, when it comes to a rating, I'm going to give A Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984 a 9.5 out of 10. So tell me, guys, what did you think of A Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, make sure you also hit the thumbs up and subscribe for more content. And don't forget to hit that bell notification so you can get notified about all the other videos coming out for the month of Horror-WEEN and for the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Anyways, guys, that's it for me. This has been the Ginger Snap Series Month of Horror-WEEN. I'm your host, Steven Harrold. I will talk to you guys later. And whatever you do, don't fall asleep.